Before I start critiquing these, I wanted to talk a little bit about compressing your video files. So I've got I've downloaded everybody's file and I have them listed here. And some of them are very large. And for a 30-second file, there's really no reason for it to be um, really much over 50 megabytes, much less. This is the biggest one here, 261 megabytes. So I want to quickly show you how to use Adobe Media Encoder to deal with this. This is now an important companion to programs like After Effects, and you in fact can render to Adobe Media Encoder from After Effects. So I'm just going to type in Adobe Media Encoder. There we are. Whoops. There we are. Launch that, and so I'm just going to copy this path real quick. And okay, so file, add source, which is Control I, like import, and I've already got that there, and this is that large one. Okay, now on mine, I don't know if this is my default settings or what. Everything just is already ready to go actually, but let me just show you these settings real quick. So here you've got all the settings. So it says format H.264, and when you use that, it's going to come out as an MP4, which is a very good file compression and very web-friendly format. So I just recommend doing that. So if it doesn't come out like that, just find that in your list. You could also do MPEG-4 here instead for that kind of compression. It says match source high bitrate. So match source means that, for example, if we click on this video tab here, if your width and height is 1280 by 720, the resulting video will be 1280 by 720. If your frame rate is 29.97 frames per second, the resulting video will be that, etc., etc. So it again, that makes it really easy. And then finally, output name, this is where it's going to save it to. I have it just saving to that same directory. So I'm just going to hit OK to that. And when you're done, you've checked those and you're ready to go, just hit this little play button. And you can see this doesn't take long at all, especially for just a 30-second video. Obviously, the longer the video and the bigger the video, the longer it'll take. But it's not too bad. Okay, that was it. And let's take a look at here. And now we should have, here's the new MP4. And look at that file size difference. We went from 261 megabytes to 25, less than 1/10 the file size. So, and let's just look at it real quick, just to look at quality. I'll review this later. So the point is there's really no issues with the quality of the image. So we have a file that's 1/10 the size, that's web friendly, and we don't have any quality issues. So I encourage all of you guys to compress. It'll take you less time to upload. It'll take me less time to download, and it'll just be, it's the right thing to do, and it's a better experience for everyone. So on to the critique. So the first one is Lucas. Let's take a look at Lucas. So this is looking really great. Let's turn the audio down and watch it again. The opener, I won't probably spend too much time critiquing this because we already spent a lot of time on this, but it's great. It's really great. Um, but again, like I said, we've gone over these before, and really just careful, precise camera movements, getting it to just line up so symmetrically with that hole, and coming down at the end. That's really good. I think um, also the just pause it here. If we take a look at these textures, you've got this nice wood texture here and this nice brick, and that really, and even on the inside surfaces, and that all is really bringing this to life nicely. And I think the ground too is really uh, helping improve this quite a bit as well. That's really making it look more realistic and good. You've got cast shadows in here, which look good. If you wanted to, I'm guessing you have an ambient light filling in the shadows. You could dim that down a bit. I mean, if you look at reference video or images of a sunlit day and video or film during a sunlit day, you'll find that the shadow areas tend to be pretty dark. We just don't want them looking black, but at the same time, this is maybe a little light. It's you have to adjust the taste, obviously, but that's one thing you can adjust. But this is really good work, and you went the extra mile with these additional textures. Your building's looking really good. So yeah, all around great work. So we've got Lojane here, and she had trouble with the aim moving not the way she wanted it to, and I've made this separate video on here, but I meant to post it earlier. I made the video, but I didn't upload it in time. But anyway, let's take a look at that. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I didn't have the sound back up. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I won't focus too much on the first parts of these. Yeah, I think that this is looking good. Obviously, if you can render it with the shadows and stuff, it would look a little nicer for this. So, yeah, you got the basic movement. You did that extra move um, through that porch, which was kind of a nice touch. Just jump ahead to here again. Maybe, sorry. There we go. It's kind of a nice wide swing around, adds a little nice touch. And then you land on these guys. Yeah, and you mentioned the curve at the end, and I did that separate video on that, so you can watch that. But yeah, you've got the basics. Better if it was rendered, but you got it all put together and turned in, so that's good. Next we have Malcolm. All right, good stuff. Gonna turn the volume down. Let's just jump ahead. I like the way that transitions over the train. That's nice. Yeah, you come close to that roof, which is interesting. And pretty good placement of these guys at the end. I mean, one thing I haven't talked much about yet is, thinking about how they're framed at the end, and that that's maybe a little bit um, maybe not the best way to frame them they're also awfully close together. Um, so yeah, I mean they're kind of on a third line here. I think you would you know you would typically see their feet um, where it ended. Let's go back there. This isn't the best player for controlling this stuff. Um, so yeah, I would think I would see their feet and their head framing is kind of low. So look at a shot where you've got two people facing each other like that. And you might have this much headroom if you were still trying to establish the environment, but since we're landing on them, I probably would have not so much headroom here. And kind of if I'm going to show, sort of either going to show their whole body, including their feet, or typically you're going to be like waist up, but not just kind of cut off their feet. But anyways, it's looking good, and you've got all the basic movement together. So and again, better if it was rendered, but Playlast is good too. So, yeah, nice work. Next up is Robert. A very good one. Oh, I can just click there. Oh, that's better. So let's jump to oh, yeah, really nice transition there with that spinning into the scene. That works out really well. Yeah, and I think you've got some good light and shadows, some cast shadows here. I would say maybe you've got the sun pretty darn low in the sky, and that's putting everything into shadow, so you're getting less interesting lighting going on here. So I might move the sun a little bit higher up, just to make it look more interesting, or maybe put the sun at a different angle so it's not being blocked by the buildings. Um, and I like the framing here a little better at the end, because there you've got kind of like I was saying in the last one, you've got a lot less headroom. This really shows off your building nicely as well, and we're really going to see those characters clearly at the end. So to me, that's a nice way to do the framing. They're not dead center. They're not quite on a third, but that's okay. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So yeah, overall good work on this. Next up we have Nancy. All right. Um, so nice smooth camera movement there. Um, I actually personally like camera movements that have less sort of twisting and turning, which this one does, because it's just, I think, a little bit more how real cameras tend to be used. I mean, one thing I think about anytime I see a camera move, what I like to think about is how would they have done this with a real camera? And in this case, drone or I mean this I'm not picking on this particular piece. It's kind of all of your it's the assignment itself. But it's like that's I mean because if it was on a wire, you'd see the wire in the shot. So it almost seems like it's got to be sort of a drone shot or something, which is certainly possible, um, but it's pretty dramatic, for opening of a western. But I always like to think, treat your camera as if it's a real camera and sort of use it as a guiding thing. But anyways, focusing on Nancy's piece here, yeah, that worked out well. I like how it's sort of a straighter shot and it's less kind of sweeping curving, which doesn't always look that good to me. You've got them from head to toe, which I think works pretty well. I think they're pretty prominent in the frame without being cut off in any spot or maybe too tall. You could probably get a little closer to them if you wanted to, but yeah, overall this is good. And I see it looks like a play blast. If you could render, that would take it up to the next level. But overall, this is good work. Next up is Sheng Xiang. Oh, we have the audio turned on. No, we have it turned on. Doesn't seem to be any audio here. Sorry, let's start that over. Okay, so that's working. I think, I don't want to dwell on these, but there's a couple improvements to this. Obviously, adding the audio, but also there was a couple other things I comment on. If you go back to the archive topics, you can see. But again, I won't spend time on that in this critique. The fade, it's nice transition there. Yeah, the camera movement's working well. They end up on a third. Oh, not worried about that. Okay. Yeah, so that's working well. That looks good. I think, yeah, you sort of have them framed on a third line, which is good. That works well. I might have them higher in the frame. They look a little, there's a lot of headroom here, and then, not much room at the bottom. So I might have adjusted that a little bit. But overall, looks good. Obviously, better, like I'm saying with everybody's who's play blessed, better if it was rendered with shadows. But yeah, the camera move works okay. This is Vici. All right, so let's turn the off. So for the opener, there was a few improvements that I mentioned to do on this that you could still do if you wanted to. If you just go back to the archive thing, for example, that big red circle looks kind of strange, and I would go for something more. If it's supposed to be a blood splatter, maybe something more like a splatter shape as opposed to be the flare of the gun, maybe something more flare shaped. And then that is where you should have faded and transitioned to your scene, but it goes to completely to black, and then it fades up, and then there's kind of that pop in the fade up. If you notice that, like it didn't fade up smoothly. So yeah, so you should work on that transition between the two. And this camera move needs some work. I mean, you don't want to go through objects like that. It's sort of jarring and um, yeah, it just isn't working well. So I think, let's try a somewhat different angle. I mean, I think the idea of sort of going through that really narrow space there could be interesting, but not when we're going through surfaces and houses and those kinds of things. So, um, and then here, it's almost like you're starting to get a decent framing on these guys now, and then suddenly it swings way around, and they're kind of pinned to the right side of the frame, and kind of not framed that well for for the shot. So they're even being cut off a little bit. So I think that you could have ended up um, at a better angle, and maybe come in from a different approach so you don't have to swing around quite so much. So um, anyway, so yeah, that's some areas for improvement. But yeah, I mean, you got the basic ideas down, the basic concept of camera animation, those kinds of things. You got the tone put together and all that. It looks like you've got rendered with shadows, so that's good too. Next up is Ryan. All right. So yeah, great opener. I'm not going to go into detail on that again, but really good stuff. Um, and Good transition. So I think that conceptually, this is good. I like the way it starts with the train. I like the way it moves over here. Maybe a bit much to spin all the way around, but um, that's sort of, I guess, 90 degrees. And I think good composition at the end. I think the only catch is that that's a lot to do in the time that you were given, because it's just ends up moving very fast. And again, I always like to think of the camera as if it was moving physically through space. And even if we're saying, oh, it's a drone camera, or whatever is making this thing move, it's hard to imagine in reality something moving the way this does at the speed it does. And it doesn't, you want it to kind of start out slow and then accelerate, like for example if it was a drone camera taking off, or even if it was some big crane rig that was moving this camera around, it would still um, have to kind of come up to speed a little bit. But this moves very fast, and um, yeah, I mean, it settles in nicely at the end, but the rest of it, I would argue, is too fast. So I think that, I mean, if you just want to make this longer, you could do that and then slow it down, or just simplify to make it less ambitious. So I would choose between those two things, because the idea is good, the movement is good, the speed is too fast. And so either it has to be longer or it has to be simpler to kind of really shine. But overall, it's good work. You got this working well. You've got the render and the cast shadows. The building's looking great. The shot's really interesting. So good job on that. So next up is Victoria. Couldn't get the file to play. We'll play from here. It's fine. Okay, good work on that. Um, um, yeah, so let's just jump right to this. Whoops. So I think it could have been interesting to, as long as you're doing, I just came up with this right now, but I'm looking at this circle here, and we transition to this circle there. I guess it's not quite the same, but it might have been interesting to fade one or the other, or have them line up or something. But anyways, yeah, I like how we fly over this roof and past the cross like that. That's pretty dramatic. I think that your shadows are too dark. I would fill them in maybe with an ambient light. But I think that, on a bright sunlit day, the difference between the light and the shadow is going to be pretty marked. So I like that there is a big difference. But in this case, I would say it's too far, because there's bouncing light that'll fill in the shadows and those kind of things. Um, and yeah, let's just take a look at that end composition. Oops, this is just tricky. Gotta just hit the button at just the right moment. Okay, close enough. I just overshot. Comedy. Okay, so yeah, I like the camera shot. It looks like there's some depth to it. I like the one guy in the foreground and the other a little further back. It's nice. Good framing. You can see the building in the background. So yeah, I think this came together well. Good work on that.